I've been wanting to make a talk for a while about death and the idea that in order to be a good society, you need religion, which is completely, what's the word? Nonsense. So, from a spiritualist or metaphysical point of view, all right, I'm not an atheist, but I'm not, as you would define a Christian or a Buddhist or anything else. I don't have a religion, but I have a metaphysics, and my metaphysics is called distributive unconsciousness. Distributive unconsciousness, or DU, I'm a DUist. So the cool thing about a DUist is you can be a Christian DUist, or you can be a pagan DUist, or a Buddhist DUist, right? And all it means is you believe in the religion that you believe in, but you remove the dogma. And as you know, if you're a Christian, the Bible's full of dogma. You know, it's full of it. If you read the Old Testament and even the New Testament, there's so much dogma in it. It's just, you know, it's like, and it's like, how can I believe in this crap, right? Because a lot of the Bibles, and this goes with the Quran and everything else, it comes from societal norms imposed during the period when these books were written. So they have very little to do with religion, but these codes of conduct have been ascribed to the religion because of the, because of the social norms of the day. So the cool thing with a DUist is you can be a Christian DUist, or you can be a Hindu or Buddhist or whatever. Because, see, DU is a metaphysics. It's a way of looking at interpreting religion or philosophy or atheism. You could be an atheist DUist. That's the beautiful thing about DU, distributive unconsciousness. And ultimately, well, before I talk about moving on, let's talk about what a metaphysics. A metaphysics is merely an outlook that you have on the universe, an outlook. So my metaphysics is based on science and what we know. So for example, we know that there was a Big Bang. What does that mean? It means there was at one point in our time period, everything was so small that it could fit into something smaller than a grain of sand. Smaller than that, 100,000 times smaller than that. Everything fit in there. So in essence, at one point, everything was one thing. Okay? On a quantum scale, everything started off as the same thing. So with that one point of metaphysics is, in that interpretation of what does that mean? It means everything you look at, everything that's around you is ultimately a part of you. So if you decide to cause harm to something or someone or something, then you're causing harm to yourself, because we all started off as one thing. So the idea of treating others as you treat yourself, ultimately in metaphysics, it just means that we're all from the same thing. Ultimately, why would you hurt yourself? So that's simple. Very simple. Now understand, this is based in science. This is based in what we know. All right, another thing is this, is that we are, in essence, eternal. The energy that was in that one thing is still there. There's a law of conservation of mass and energy. It means you cannot create something out of nothing. Stuff moves from one state to another state. So ultimately, if you're concerned about an afterlife, or if you're concerned about what the heck happens when I die, well, you just return to that state. And, you know, people always talk about, you know, I saw the soul leave. I saw that leave. Well, in essence, there is an energy. There's a part of you, like the fuel in a battery, okay? You can't really, you can measure the weight of a battery when it is alive, when it's good. and then you measure a weight of a battery when it's dead, and guess what? It weighs the same. However, one is dead and one is alive. Well, that energy, that state hasn't gone anywhere, has just moved from one state to another. In a sense of a battery, from heat or from work, you know, it is moved to the other state. And then ultimately with a solar panel, we ultimately are putting energy back into that thing, right? And revitalizing it. In essence, when we're born again, that's the same thing. The energy is just moving from another state to a new state. So the idea of, that you should think about that, of immortality, is you are immortal, and the law of conservation of energy, it says that, the law, and you may say, well, you say distributive unconscious means the level of consciousness. The way, for example, the way we think and the way the universe thinks are two different things. Our consciousness is based on our experiences, our outlook, what we see, but we have this massive unconsciousness behind us, this window into our soul, into the universe that we don't quite understand or everything. Well, think of everything that's out there kind of is similar that way, is that even a rock, or there's a state of energy, there's a state of let's say that underlying thing that made us, that connected us all together at one point, is still there. Space is just an illusion. You see the space, and everything is space, but that space is still a part of that one thing, right? So when you think of how do I say this? Well, let's example. So when you get in gear, I need to get in fifth gear. I'm trying to change gear with one hand. It's a challenge. So when you think of life, when you think of existence, that existence is just a phase, so to speak, where we're moving from one phase to another. And death is just one of those phases. Life is one of those phases. So you should never be afraid of death. You're just moving from one phase to another. If you are, it simply means that your ego is clinging on to something. You're craving, as you would say in Buddhism, you're craving this thing, and you don't want to let it go. And that should not be, that when you realize, in essence, you're all one thing, you are merely the consciousness of the universe awakening to know itself. And I took that, I kind of extrapolated from some stuff that Carl Sagan has said, but you are the consciousness of the universe awakening to know itself. So we exist ultimately to explore the question, who am I? But not in the sense of the ego, but in the greater sense of the universe and itself wanting to, let's say, to experience the beauty of itself. So anyway, I hope this talk hits a chord, and I hope you'll become a deist like myself. It's a metaphysics. We don't have meetings or anything else. There's no nonprofit. There's no institution. It's simply a tag that says, I am, I believe in what I believe, but I base that belief fundamentally on what I know on science, and I extrapolate that to mean this. Another way to think of it is everything is data, is information. The Big Bang was information. That information is still there. That information is still distributed and connected. And we know that, for example, from supersymmetry. And supersymmetry basically says if two items are entangled, and we know, again, this is fact, that this entanglement exists, and my stipulation is that I believe that's a special kind of entanglement, but in fact everything is entangled. So everything is connected by this entanglement, and with supersymmetry, if this something the size of a buckyball, like a molecule, turns a certain direction, then the other thing that it's entangled with will also turn in the opposite direction. It's entangled. So it's supersymmetry, it's called. So I believe supersymmetry exists everywhere, and that entanglement is not an anomaly, like it's a rare thing, but it's actually just detected in these things, but in fact it's everywhere. So that there basically creates the framework for this, what I call unconsciousness, because I don't see this thing as a conscious state. People pray to God and stuff like that, and how often does God talk back to you? Well, if He does, and you tell someone, they'll probably check you into a mental hospital. But that sense is, I talk to the universe. I just tell it how I feel and what I would hope for, and I know that the universe is listening, and that's good enough for me, because again, with supersymmetry, I know that we're all connected. So if I put that feeling out, right, then I know that feeling is going to impact. And there's a lot of this is kind of ties into that whole yoga thing. I can't think what it's called, that big movement that says if we all feel happy and if we all put out positiveness, then it's going to change the state of our consciousness. In a sense, what they're talking about is distributive unconsciousness. So a lot of these things out there are kind of rooted in a level of extrapolated science, right? It's there's no actual evidence of distributive unconsciousness other than the evidence that supersymmetry, and then making the stipulation that this information exchange is happening everywhere. My name is Mike Trout. Hope you enjoyed this talk on distributive unconsciousness, or DU.